to all my ghouls and goblins, to all my children of the night. My name is Dory, and I welcome you to my cozy, spooky, and today very green nook of the internet. It has been a hot minute. It has been a while since my last upload. And before continuing further, I must say I'm very sorry, very, very sorry for my absence. A lot has happened in my life over the past months. Things shifted quietly at first, and then bam, all at once. You can already tell that the background of my room has changed. I still live in the same apartment, but I moved into my living room, which is large enough to accommodate my growing plant collection. Another big change that happened in my life is that I am now a cemetery gardener, a Friedhofsgardener. I now work among graves, among memory, among forgotten stories, and in a way this work had already changed me in ways that I did not expect, and in ways that I'm so deeply, deeply grateful for. And the strangest and also very magical thing about it is that this new path began with a story that I wrote years ago, many years ago, I believe 3 or 4 years ago, a story about a man called Blumenpeter. It was through him, through his name, through his grave, through his story, that I discovered that such work even exists. So today it feels only right that this is the story I returned with. And before we continue further with the story of Blumenpeter, I would like to give you just a quick information on his life. His real name was Peter Schäfer, born on April the 5th, 1875, in Plankstadt, near the city of Mannheim in Germany. In life, he was known across Mannheim as a flower seller, a small, fragile man who walked the streets with bunches of violets, calling out to passerby in his unmistakable dialect. Kauf mehr Apps up. Buy something from me. He became a familiar figure, almost part of the city itself. Some laughed at him, some pitied him, but many remembered him with a strange affection. He was always there, in the streets, in the markets, carrying his flowers, bringing, I believe, familiarity, or like comfort to the passerbys. In his final years, Peter Schäfer lived here, in the city where I live, in Wiesloch, in the psychiatric institution. He died on the 15th of June 1940 and was buried in the cemetery of the asylum, far from the streets that once knew him. He was not among those officially recorded as victims of the Nazi euthanasia program, but he died within the same system, a system at the very time targeting the most vulnerable, the disabled, and the forgotten. Today, his grave remains. A name survived where so many others did not. Now, let's go straight to the story of Blumenpeter, and I invite you to grab yourself your beverage of choice. And also, today, as a lucky coincidence, is the 5th of April, the day where Peter Schäfer, Blumenpeter, was born. So, happy birthday to you, Blumenpeter. And I want to say thank you with all my heart for inspiring this story with your story and to bringing me to this new path that I so deeply, deeply appreciate. Thank you with all my heart. Cheers to you, Blumenpeter. The violet voice. I should not have come back. The first time was chance, a wander through the cemetery, a pause at a curious name, Blumenpeter. A man once known in Mannheim as the flower seller. They say he was a gentle soul, simple of mind, but with arms always, always full of blossoms. Day after day he walked the streets with his cry, "Carve mehr Ebbs up, buy something from me." He was part of the city's heartbeat, a figure so familiar that people could not imagine Mannheim without him. Some laughed, some mocked, but many, many cherished him. His flowers were never fine, small bunches, often wilting, but his presence brought a strange cheer. And yet, here he lay, not in Mannheim, not among those who known him, but in Wiesloch, in the cemetery of the asylum. He died there in 1940, buried quietly among the forgotten. That first visit unsettled me. The stone was small, the letters worn, as though his memory itself was fading. I stood there, imagining the noise of the market, his cry rising above it, and felt a pang of sorrow. And then something else, a sweetness in the air, faint but sharp. Violets. There were no flowers on the grave, and none grew nearby. Yet the scent lingered. I left quickly, telling myself it was nothing. But that night, I dreamt of him. I saw a figure at the foot of my bed, small, stooped, arms overflowing with blossoms. His face was shadowed, but his voice was clear. Carve mehr Ebbs up. It rang in the room, bright and broken, full of joy and sorrow twined together. I walk with tears on my face, and the scent of violets clung to the air. So I returned. I told myself I was only curious, that I wanted to see if the feeling would come again. But I knew the truth. I could not bear the thought of him waiting alone. Something in his cry, in that dream, had reached me. It felt like a call. The cemetery was darker this time. Rain had fallen, soaking the grass until it muffled my steps. The trees dripped with cold water. Every sound seemed distant, hushed. I walked to his grave with a strange heaviness in my chest. I stood before the stone and whispered his name. For a long moment, nothing. Only the wet silence. Then it came again. The sweetness, thick, overwhelming. Violets. My breath caught. The air itself seemed to pause, as if the world was listening. And then I heard him. The cry, faint, but distinct, unfurled inside me. Carve mehr ebbs up. It did not come from the earth, nor the air, but from somewhere deeper, as if his voice had taken roots in my bones. It was not frightening, not in a way ghost stories are meant to frighten. It was much, much worse. It was sorrow made sound. It was yearning so raw that my eyes burned with the tears. I wanted to answer. I wanted to tell him I was there, that I saw him, that he was not forgotten. My lips parted, but no words came. My throat was locked, my voice gone. And then I looked down. On the grave lay a violet, a single blossom, fresh, glistening with rain. I froze. I have not brought it. No one else was there. It waited for me. His offering. His flower. Last time I had fled. This time I could not. My hand trembled as I reached for it. The petals were soft, impossibly fresh. I lifted it to my chest. The fragrance swelled, filling me until I could hardly breathe. It was grief and joy together, sharp as lost, sweet as forgiveness. The heaviness around me lifted, the silence eased. And in that moment I felt him, not calling, not pleading, but sighing softly, content. I left the cemetery with the violet in my hand. At home I pressed it between the pages of my journal. It has not withered, and sometimes when I open the book, the fragrance rises again. Violets in the stillness, and faintly, very faintly, a voice. Carve mehr Eps ab. Not a cry, not a plea, but a gift. Perhaps all he wanted was to be remembered. Perhaps all he needed was for someone to take his flower. And so I did. Thank you so much for taking of your time to listen to this story of mine devoted to Blumenpeter. And today, on his birthday, if you go out and see a blooming violet, remember him and take his gift. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope I'll see you next time. Until then, be cozy, stay spooky, and above all, stay